Hi, everyone. How are we doing this morning?
Yeah.
Fantastic. As Megan said, I am Neil Druckmann.
And I'm Cory Barlog.
See, you had one line, dude. And we are gonna just chat about game direction, creative direction, the creative process. Studio stuff, budgets, industry secrets, where the bodies are buried, basically anything we can. We have a little thing here where we asked a bunch of people to submit questions, and we put these questions into this fishbowl so that if ever I get bored with Neil, I'm going to grab a question so that we can spice up the conversation. And he will do the same. So you can judge us when we grab one of the questions that clearly we are not happy with the other person. But first, I actually just want to kick something off. Most of this is going to be generally a therapy session for me talking to another creative director to find out if I am crazy and how I do things. And I thought an appropriate beginning to all of this is to talk about doubt, because it's something I think we all feel, and I've been feeling in the lead up to getting up here and talking. How do you process that, man?
How do I process doubt?
Yeah, like beforehand when you're prepping for anything, do you have a voice in your head that tells you you suck, like I do? And by the way, to be clear, I mean that my voice in my head tells me that Neil sucks.
That voice does the same exact thing to me. Yeah, I don't know how you do this stuff and not have doubt, because there's so much running a studio or making a game or a TV show, all these endeavors, there's just so many people involved. There's such a big budget. There's all this pressure. Sometimes you're making a sequel or a new IP. There's all these expectations. And there's no formula of how to succeed or to guarantee success. You can never guarantee success. So all you could do is kind of follow your instincts, follow the advice the team has given you. Trust the process, right? Because what we have at Naughty Dog is we have a process that every time we followed it has led us to success. So I am, and we are, very protective of that process.
So the process is kind of a formula.
Specific. What's that?
The process is kind of a formula.
It's a way that we work together. It's a way that we vet ideas. You know, one of our values is iteration. We know that our first idea is never the best one. We have to get to the seventh one to get to something interesting or something unique. The first few usually are derivative or usually something you've seen before, and that's how you start kind of digging and unearthing. And we know we're gonna have to throw work away. That's part of our process. And at times that could be frustrating for people, members of the team, ourselves. But I think just going through it over and over again, that's how you could just get past your doubt, because that doubt will always be there all the way to the end. The only project I was ever confident in, I was not in charge of, was Uncharted 2. And every other project where I was like at the head of it, I was sure at many points that we were gonna fail, that we were not gonna succeed, and you just have to power past that feeling.
Do you ignore it? Do you internalize it to keep you up at night?
Yeah, it's hard to turn it off, as I'm sure you know, like our family and our partners sometimes suffer from this. Was like, it's hard for this thing to fully turn off when you like leave the office. But no, I don't think it's good to ignore it either, because sometimes there is something there that's telling you this thing is wrong, or this thing might be wrong, that you know, you don't want, there's a term I've recently heard, toxic positivity. You don't want that either, to just say whatever we're doing is correct. There's often gonna be stuff that's gonna be wrong. That, again, it's like none of us are perfect doing this. No matter how long you've been doing this, you're going to make mistakes.
So there's a voice that's telling you something's not right, which I imagine we all have. What's the process inside of you? So I have a thing of my own, that when there's the sea of ideas, right? And for individual things, whether it's casting, whether it's a specific line, whether it's like a mechanic or anything, right? Or a concept piece, that you have all these options, but there is a singular idea. Is there anything process-wise or internally that happens to you that indicates that it's right? Is it like a physical feeling, or is there a voice that's like, that's it, Neil, that's the one, man?
Is that what you have? Do you have like...
Yeah, I have like a 45-year-old biker in my head that basically tells me it's right.
I'm actually curious to hear from you, because at different phases of production, it's a different kind of voice, or it's a different kind of instinct. When it's a blank slate, all you really have is your instincts. There's not much else to draw from.
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, when we're making a new IP, and I'm just in it right now with Intergalactic.
Way to brag.
It's, you're trying to find the thing that's like exciting and new for us, maybe has a little bit of risk associated with it, that's the artistic side of it. And you have to kind of imagine, is this going to be exciting 2, 3, 4 years from now when I'm still working on this? Or is this something that's just exciting in this moment, but a month from now, it's going to start to get boring?
Is it sustainable?
Is it sustainable?
See?
The theme, there, you got it in. But once you have that, and that could take a while to find,
Yeah.
then you have something to draw from for other decisions. Then when 5 people come and pitch you 5 amazing ideas, how do you choose between them?
Exactly.
Do you pick the coolest one? Sometimes that might be the correct thing, but more often you say, which one of these ideas gets us closer to our vision, what this thing is about? The thing that got us excited in the beginning, what are those choices that will get us closer and closer to that? And sometimes you might say, hey, we keep veering away from this thing. Oh, we should reassess our assumption. Again, iteration, what we thought this thing was about, turns out this thing is not about that. Now it's about this other thing, and it shifts and evolves. Is that kind of like how you?
Fuck no. No, mine is. Yours feels ordered and structured, and it's planned and measured against so many other things. Mine is it's a physical feeling. It's like a physical, auditory, visual kind of thing.
So if someone comes and pitches an idea, you're like, ooh, I just felt that.
Yes, I move towards my. You're actually right. Yes, it is a feeling in my stomach. It is it's like if 3 ideas are pitched. If none of them are right, they sort of like move and harmonize out of tune, right? And I don't feel anything, or I feel like I don't like that, right? And that's just like a general like numb malaise, right? But if there are 5 ideas or even a singular idea and it's right, I feel like I'm on a roller coaster and like my stomach is dropping, but then also I visually see the idea, which is super weird, which more than likely marks me as crazy, but like it physicalizes in space as this like sort of sine wave vibration.
Do you ever get that feeling for more than one idea? For a problem you need to solve?
I'm very monogamous with my ideas. Yeah.
And then what do you do?
It's as if it is harmonizing better, right? Meaning that there's like, oh my God, that is it. That's it. That's the idea. There it is. There it is. That's it. That's it. And it kind of is moving and sort of in harmony with all of the other things that are around it that are somewhat solidified, right? You figured out this, you figured out that, oh my God, they are in sync, like the band. And it feels right. It feels physically right. And then if something elevates beyond the idea or something is better, it feels as if it's, oh no, that is actually locked in a lot easier. And I never understood that that's what that feeling was for the longest time. Like I just felt that. And then noticed or recognized like, oh my gosh, I feel like maybe that's my body telling me that that's right, or I'm crazy.
What's your hit ratio? Like how often do you have that feeling and later it turns out to be incorrect?
Unfortunately, I have the worst memory ever, so I have no idea. I don't know, right? I think you could say on larger ideas, yeah, maybe that is right. Like the no-cut camera thing was like, that felt right. It felt right, more right than anything. And it felt like I had to do this, and it felt like it was there. But even these smaller decisions, like when you're casting somebody, and you're seeing all these different actors, and they're all brilliant, and they're all so good, and they come in, and it's overwhelming to think, like, how do you choose somebody? Because the majority of these people that are coming out are just fantastic performers and wonderful, beautiful human beings. But the person who's right makes you stand up, right? Makes you, like, you feel it, and it just goes, oh my God, there it is. Like, it's like this pin locked into place, and that feels good. And
I'm envious of that, because for me, it's sometimes there's this gut instinct, and sometimes it's very loud and it's very clear, but more often it's not that clear. And I have to almost like when there's a problem, we say, what are all the possible solutions? Let's get all of them on the table. I need to see all of them. And then we just try each one and say which one, again, is more correct for the vision that we have. And that's true for casting as well.
Yeah.
Like, well, I remember when we were making Last of Us 2, when we were casting for Abby, in the moment on the stage, I was sure it was going to be a different actor. Later, I went back to the office and I watched each video and I'm studying it like frame by frame. And I came out of my office and I talked to a few people and I said, it's Laura Bailey. And they're like, no way, because we all said we weren't going to cast Laura because she's in everything. And I'm like, watch this video, watch what she's doing, look at this one moment. And again, I had to really study it carefully. Look at the vulnerability she's introducing right there. Like, no one else has that. And all the people I talked to, they came back, they're like, you're right, it's Laura Bailey. But it took like a lot of examination. I had to go past the instinct, because my instinct in that moment was incorrect.
So you're like experimentation, study, process, think, frame by frame. That's awesome.
Yeah, and again, I don't know how to articulate this like combination of instinct and just almost like an engineering effort of like just really studying all the.
Does your instinct feel like something? Or does it sound like something?
Yes, but I don't know if it's a physical thing. Just something just will feel correct. I'm like, oh, that feels correct. That feels like there's a problem. This feels like the right solution.
Then how do you feel when another thing supersedes that?
It feels more correct. It's more.
See? There's a positive spin on that one. Because I could spin out and be like, I was wrong. Wow, what an idiot. I go back and question that decision. I have a terrible sort of control over what's in my head. I just blurt it out sometimes. And there's that audition for Henry Thomas, I think, for E.T. And he's doing the interview or the audition, and at the end of it, on the recording, you can hear Spielberg be like, "You got the job, kid," right? Like he couldn't control it. And it's the same, like when we were auditioning Danielle for Freya, we had seen so many people, and after every audition, they're like, "So what do you think?" Like the writers were all sitting there. I'm like, "I think she was great," right? Like, "Oh, those are great. They're great." Like I just couldn't. Nothing felt like it was. That's it. And then Danielle auditioned, and I think her first take, you can hear on the tape me going, "Fuck." Because that was it. Like, it was completely right. And I was like, I was transfixed. I was in that sort of moment of believability, but also weird metaphysically. It all vibrated correctly and sort of hit. This is the feeling you have when you pick amongst the sea of ideas. Is it the same when you know something is done? So an individual aspect, not the whole game, because it's never done. But these individual things are like, okay, I got to move on. Or, okay, we can move on.
I struggle with done. I think because I just grew up
I've
with
never
such
heard that about you.
a perfectionist mind. It never feels done. I've never worked on anything that felt truly done. Even down to tasks, they never quite feel done. And that's where it's like a schedule is so important for me because that's what tells me it's done. Or that's what tells me it needs to be done pretty soon. Without that, I would keep working on it forever.
So you like the schedule?
I need the schedule. I don't know if I like the schedule. I hate the schedule in many ways, but I need it. I think that the team needs it as well because, it's not unique to me, it's just Naughty Dog, we're perfectionists. And without it, we would just keep iterating. Because again, iteration, every time we iterate, it gets better. It just keeps getting better. And there's diminishing returns for sure. And that's where you have to, I think, when you have enough experience doing it, you say, okay, it's starting to be like the stuff we're changing and fixing, it's just for us at this point. The player will never notice these things. And I guess in time you say, good enough, let's move on. Look at the schedule. We got all these other things we have to get to. It's good enough here. Time permitting, we'll come back to this and do one more turn on the crank.
So the schedule's like a kick in the butt to yourself. Like, okay, are you often, we can move on, we need to move on? Like, have you had a lot of moments where you're like, we nailed it. That's it. It's on. I don't want to touch this.
We have an easier time, and I'm curious to hear how your studio works, which is, if it's an outward-facing deadline, it's much easier to get everybody on board to polish it and get it to a really good state. Internal deadlines, not so much. We've gotten a lot better over the years, but still there's a delta there.
Yeah,
it's
very flexible.
Quite significant. And it's because it's oh, we have more time. We don't have to tie ourselves to these decisions. Let's explore more options. Once it's public facing, you're like, no, a decision has to be made now. we cannot iterate on this anymore. This is what the character looks like. This is this moveset. This is the story. Whatever that choice is, you have to commit. So I really enjoy those moments. In that same way, the schedule kind of forces certain decisions. Those demos or trailers or stuff, they force us to make certain decisions, and you can't iterate past that point.
I remember you telling me about that before. You were like doing the demo was a great forcing function for the team.
Yeah.
And I totally stole that from you, and we had you come in and view the game. That backfired, and I blame you, by the way, so just I want you to carry that with you. That was when Shu said he was horrified by the game, and I was like, fucking Neil, man. But yeah, those are, I agree, they're good. They force you to accept certain things. I think that I've had many moments where I'm like, man, that's it, right? And I think early, I was able to do that and believe that, and stay believing that for a while. But
can I follow up with your instinct harmonizing thing? So you have this physical sensation when something is right for the project. I get how that feels very true to you. I assume it doesn't feel true to everybody on the team.
Oh God, no.
So then what do you do to say, okay, I've had this feeling? Did you just trust that, well, Cory has a feeling, so we're going with that? Or do you now have to kind of reverse engineer from that feeling and say, okay, why does this? Why am I having this feeling for this thing? And then how do I explain it to the team to get them on board?
I definitely don't explain what I just said about the feeling thing to people. They're not going to see this, though, so that'll be fine. But yeah, it isn't often that they believe it. And that isn't to say that, look, the team is amazing, and they are all insanely smarter than I am and see things in a way that I often overlook and often don't get a clear picture on. But then there are times where I'm like, this is absolutely it. So then it is sales mode, right? That sense of like, trust me, this is going to be good. This is why it's good. This connects to this. This is over here. Dude, this is actually being built up 6 hours before. And when we get to this moment, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And at a certain point, if they don't believe, it's just a shiny object, distract them with another problem, right? I'm so angry about this other thing. And then everyone's like, what is he talking about? But it is very hard to convey that when it's like, that feeling sometimes isn't backed up by what you're saying. Let's balance it against what is working for the game. Sometimes it's this flying leap of, we're painting a piece of the picture that has a giant blank space around it, and we painted this other piece of the picture, but I'm certain of this one part, but there's nothing to anchor it to everybody else to say, like, no, trust me, this is why this works. And then you try to explain it, and you sound like a crazy person, and then you're like, okay, you know what, like, let's just set it aside if there is serious concerns, because a lot of times the phrase, I think that perhaps is popular in all of the creative endeavors, but I notice in games it's not, I'm concerned about ... right? It's usually the lead-in subject on a Monday morning when someone has sort of processed over the weekend and realized I said something insane, and they were like, I'm really concerned about this because it sounds like it's going to be way too big or too complicated or it doesn't make any sense. And then trying to figure out, like, okay, where are we having a problem? Where can we kind of get on the same page? Because just trust me does not work for very long. And obviously it's incumbent upon us to be able to explain the vision, but really it's some weird form of black magic that is hard to properly explain if it's just like, trust me, I have this feeling. The Noka camera thing was like a fight the whole time in various groups of like, they were not wrong either, 100% right. It was a lot of work. And it was like, is this really gonna mean anything? Is it really gonna pay off? Is it really gonna,
Well, that goes back to your initial thing about doubt, which is there is a version of that game that doesn't have the one-cut camera.
Yep.
And there's a version of that game that's amazing. But you just have to make certain choices, certain commitments, and to say that and often people will come and pitch me very different ideas than what we're making. And I say, and I'm not going to tell them they're wrong because they're not. No. I don't, again, I just don't see that version. And if I have to lead this project, I have to believe in these choices. If I don't believe them, I can't sell them. I can't tell you if it's working or not working, if it doesn't appeal to my taste.
And that's another thing. Our influence, right, the sort of the vision of what you want to do, then you have that like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I see. Want is, not right. It's what I see. when I close my eyes. This is what I see as the whole picture. Then there's the radiating out of the team. What the team sees, what the team sort of views and sort of processes everything that's there, and then there's the audience. And how do you take all that information in? What is the ratios of influence? That's the word I was looking for. We'll get there eventually. That you have for your own influence of like, this is the vision, but then the team's influence of like, oh my God, that's actually totally a different direction, but I love that, or nope, this is not the game that we're making, or now the expectation of the audience, right? Because obviously they haven't seen it, but then there's the expectation built up of, I want this, or I expect this, like it should be like Madden, it should be like GTA.
You mean from a team or from outside audience or just all
I mean,
of it?
everybody, like your own, because I feel like we, like in each, sort of area of the bullseye, as it goes out, there's the same thing, but we take it in, right? We take it in from ourselves, then we take it in from the team, then we take it in from the audience. Like, how much weight do you give each of these groups?
The further they get away from people I work closely with, just the less I give it attention.
Yeah.
So there's a core group of creatives I work with, and they get a lot of my attention, and a lot of it, often, most of the ideas in the game are not mine. And I actually prefer it that way. So for me, it's to find what is the emotional truth, the emotional core of this thing. And then really just as best as I can explain that, pitch it to the team, get alignment with them. If they're not aligned, then I should do a better job convincing them, or I should reconsider it, because I need them on board. It's not right. It's not a one-man show. It's made by hundreds of people. And then, once you get outside the studio to like players, again, they don't quite know what it takes to make it. So if you're making a sequel, I think there's a lot of value to see, well, what did they like previously? What are the things that they've been attached to? As a fan of this thing, do I feel similar stuff? So there are takeaways there. But beyond that, especially when you're making it, and you don't know all the choices you're making, they might see the trailer or a screenshot or a bunch of leaked cinematics if you're unlucky enough to have that
experience. Always accurate, by the way.
That's why I think you can't, and it's infinite, right? There's just so much feedback there. At some point, you have to shut it off.
Yeah. What is it? How does it impact risk taking? That like, okay, I know this is a leap, right? Kratos has a kid. Like it's a big leap. Like, are people gonna like it? And there's.
I mean, were you scared about that?
Hell yeah. But I was too stupid to really be scared. I think that's at that time. I was.
Well, this is where process may be as, I don't consider risks maybe as in the same way some other people, because I've always taken risks and they've always been successful. So that to me is now part of the process, which is if there's no risk in the project, if it feels safe, then because to me it's like there's a balance between art and business. And often they're in conflict with each other. Like business often wants you to mitigate risk and take very calculated risk and look at market research. And art was like, I want to do something unique and fresh and I want to have an impact. And so to me, you have to kind of protect both. But if I had to pick one, I lean towards the art, because actually when we have, that has led us to more and more success. So why would I give that up?
Yeah.
And it's also the thing that drives us. Like to me, you're going to be probably lucky enough to get this question after your God of War show. People constantly ask me like, oh, so are you now going to go do TV or movies? And I say, no, probably not. Because games...
Says the guy who did.
Because I dabble. But there's something so thrilling to me about games is that there are way more unknowns and way more risks. And I do this... okay, since we're talking about TV and stuff, I one time, I gave some direction to Pedro Pascal, dropping names.
Drop some names. He does the TV stuff. He
does like the voice work for the.
Is he a producer
or something? Yeah. And I think he was frustrated by direction. He said it jokingly. He's like, "Do you like art?" And I said defensively, like, "Yeah. Do you like art?" And he said, without missing a beat, he goes, "It's the reason I wake up in the morning. It's why I live and breathe." And to me, it's like, that's why we do it, because it's so like, it's hard to describe. I'm going on so many tangents. When I was starting out, I was an intern at Naughty Dog. And I remember watching my boss, Evan Wells, who was the game director on Jack 3 at the time, and he's walking around, he's playing the game, and he's giving a bit of feedback, how we should change it. And I'm like, I agree with that feedback. That's the easiest job in the world. I could do that. The thing you don't know is the amount of stress that comes with those choices. Yeah. I'm curious how you deal with that, because at times it's overbearing. At times I've had panic attacks. It's just so much stress. But you do it because you love it so much. Yeah. Like, I love games so much. I love the stories we tell in games so much. It's the reason to wake up in the morning. It's why we do what we do. And it's despite all the negatives that come with it, sometimes the death threats and all the negativity and all those things, you just kind of dismiss those things and say, yeah, but I get to make games with the most talented people. Like, how lucky are we? That was a weird tangent. I don't even remember your question.
Doesn't matter. I don't remember it either. But that's really, no, I agree with you. Because I've had the exact same moment where I looked at somebody in charge making decisions and was like, that's so easy. What an easy job. Wow, so cushy. But it's because sitting on the outside, it looks like the surface level of observing something and saying, you give me two things, I'm gonna pick one. Like it's super easy, that's all it is. But the crucible that is created in, that decision is created in, is this fiery, hot pit of fucking hell, man. That is like never ending during the process, because you are taking in all this stuff, stressing over it, second guessing everything, and hoping that you get that feeling in each one of those moments to ensure the decision you just made was right. Invariably, if you make that thousands of decisions a day, you know that there was a bunch that you had to move on, and you had to just make that decision. But I definitely had the big wake-up call when I was like, that's so easy, man. I could easily do that.
Well, actually, the hardest, because we're talking about that instinct and schedule and stuff, that there are times where you're like, we haven't nailed it. This is not correct, and I have to move on. Those are the hardest moments for me, of like, I know there's a better version here, we just haven't found it, and it's time to move on.
Those are painful. Those are soul-crushing, but I have to imagine, like, you guys were, what, 6 months out of finishing Last of Us 1. And it was, like Ellie wasn't working, right? Like
a lot was not working.
Yeah.
The game was not fun.
But I mean, and with every game, like it's always a giant mess, but something so massive like that, the way you were approaching it wasn't working. And you guys threw that shit out that close to where you wanted to release. Like that kind of decision, where it feels like you have to tell people, not only on the team, but the people above who write the checks, like, hey, we're gonna make this gigantic pivot on this thing. That has to be hard.
Yes, it is really hard, and you do your best to compartmentalize it, and it's like sits somewhere in your body for a while. And you make the best call. Like sometimes it's like, it might be too hard of a call to make on my own. So again, I bring the people I trust the most, and I say, here's the problem. Here are the only solutions I can see. Do you guys see any other solutions? And they might introduce a few other things. And then we just say, with the time we have left, with the resource we have, what's the best solution here? And you pick that, and you go, we're in Vegas, and you roll the dice, and you hope that was the correct one.
Ultimately, it usually proves to be the correct one. If it feels
again, the process has led us time and time again to when we followed our instincts. And again, we're being thoughtful. It's in the combination of those two. It has led us to success.
Trust the process. Trust the process. Yeah. It'll work. I think I'm too chaotic to have a super organized process. That does feel like I want to trust the process on so many occasions, but a lot of times it is that, like, in the moment.
I feel like we have to read at least one of these. Otherwise, people are going to be like, why did I submit
He broke the seal on the first one. He's determining my answer as being boring. So we're going to go with this first one.
Blah, 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 instincts. How do you know what type of games you're good at? Do you ever really restrict yourself to one niche, or is it that you find you have a passion to keep exploring a specific archetype of game?
I mean, the straight up honest answers, I don't really feel like I'm good at any of them, but I have not even a niche, it's just more like, is there something that's interesting to me? And it becomes a little bit more of a obsession, I guess. Like my son is like that as well. He was super obsessed with trains, and now is super obsessed with planes. And prior to that, it was volcanoes and sharks, and he just dives in and learns so much about that. And I think for me, there is that sense of like the core fantasy, the core idea, or just a concept of the human experience that's interesting to explore, that I'm like, I just really want to dive into that, which is a product of some severe OCT and autism that just makes me hyper fixate and hyper focus on these things, and then somehow convince other people that, like my obsession, we should all totally go along for the ride on this one. But I think for me, I love genre-wise, like the action-adventure genre. Like it's the most, I think, readily approachable game type for me. Whereas I want to be that smart person who likes strategy games, but I'm fucking stupid. And I do not have that sort of like intellectual capacity, I think, to be in EVE Online, going through menus and participating in the grand political war. It's a great game, by the way. I'm not saying bad things about it, but I'm just too stupid to play it.
I guess I'm curious, are the games that you, because you're talking about games that you play,
Yeah.
is that the same overlap of the games you want to make?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't, you know what, I'm gonna name drop, man. No, I'm not gonna do that. I was in a meeting with somebody who had said, like, I make things that I want, right? That I want to watch. And I was like, oh man. Like, I've heard it said a lot, and it is something that we repeat. I make something that I want to play, but like it is 100% that. Like I have to want to play it throughout the process until I reach the end, and then I hate it and I need to step away from it. Like when it releases, like when it goes out, you're so fed up with it, and you believe in it, you love it, and it's like really like your child that you've worked with this massive group of talented people to make this thing, but I just have to step away from it. I can't be in the same room as it because it's immersed and sucked out so much life from me. Yeah, action adventure games. That's and again, I think it's because it's an immediate thing, and it's like the opportunity to sort of feel like I can be this character for a period of time, and I want to be that character. Like I find it engaging, and those are the kind of, it's the thing I want to play, the things I want to make. Which I guess makes it boring that I'm not like, hey, you should really branch out and try something, risky. But I feel like there's plenty of risk every single day, so I don't need to. I don't know, maybe I should make a kart racing game. I feel like that's what you're telling me.
I think a God of War kart racing game.
Yeah. God of War X racing.
How dare you?
I know.
How dare you?
This is your apex of your career.
Jack X combat racing?
Yeah. Like I'm waiting for the sequel. Hint, hint, hint. So.
Should we drop the bomb right here?
We are going to leak a few things. So, do you want to answer that question, or do you even remember? Well, how do you choose do you feel like you're good at a specific type of game?
Making it or playing it, I guess. Because actually, these days, I find like, I actually sometimes struggle playing games that are very similar to the games I make. Because then I can't turn my work brain off. It's like I play it and I'm like, I would have done this differently. I would have changed this. Oh, interesting how they implemented this. Oh, the scripting here is not quite, like, I struggle to turn that off. So I'll play like 1,000 hours of Balatro instead.
Still good.
But I could never make Balatro. I think I would struggle. There's certain games that I played, I don't know if I could ever make those games.
Yeah.
So for me, it is kind of a common, like I grew up playing point-and-click adventure games. Those were some of my favorite games growing up. And then second to that was platformers. And now I feel like I've kind of landed, like that's why I was so drawn to Naughty Dog. I was like, I've landed somewhere where like they value both of those kind of genres and have weirdly combined them. So I'm kind of working on my dream games, even though sometimes I struggle to play them when other people make them.
So it's a mashup of the things that influenced you early on. Yeah, point-and-click adventure games, man. That was the thing that drew me into gaming, I think, heavily, was losing tons of sleep playing games on my Amiga 500, right? That was awesome. All right, I'm gonna grab a question here. But also, Neil, are you in fact a control freak?
I'm laughing because when we were rehearsing, walking on stage, we're like, okay, who's sitting in which chair? We're arguing about which side we're going to sit on because, again, we can't turn it off. I am, but I think I've gotten better at that. I've definitely, the most control freak I was Last of Us 1. And over time, I've been able to just kind of let go and just trust the team more. And even sometimes, like, I hear a pitch, I'm like, you know, I would do it differently, but this person is so passionate about this. And I'm like, does it work with what we're trying to make? It does, even though maybe I might be more drawn to it. But again, they're going to own it for so long. I'm going to go with their idea.
You're a recovering control freak. That's good.
I
am a control freak.
I sometimes relapse. But,
I am a control freak, and I don't have a recovery plan. But I actually am like self-aware of it and trying to figure it out. But I feel like we end up in the position we end up in because of that. That's like a defining feature. But I do feel like, in part, all of us in the creative business are.
So it's interesting now that I spend a lot of time mentoring directors and seeing them kind of rise up. And I see, like, I probably had this as well, but I see pretty consistently with new directors where they feel like the ideas have to come from them and they have to be the smartest person in the room. And I tell them, let go of those two things as quickly as you can. It'll make you a better director. Because your job is not to come up with the best ideas. Your job is to recognize the best idea or the most correct idea and make sure it slots into place. Don't be the smartest person in the room. There's going to be people that are way smarter than you. Let them just argue and pitch ideas, and you pay attention and kind of try to visualize all of them and kind of slot them into the game. Are they working? Are they not? Why? And then once you kind of like see the board, then speak. But until then, just be quiet. Because what it also does is it creates a safe space for other people to pitch ideas. And you want them to generate as many ideas as possible because you're trying to find the best one. And if it always comes from you, they're going to be scared to pitch ideas.
Don't be the smartest person in the room. I got that check right from the beginning. So that's the secret to my success. It's interesting because now it segues into something else I want to ask about, because I kind of feel like, I think there was even people asking a question about this, but I'm still confused about it. So we're going to work our way through this problem up on stage. In this industry, we have creative directors and we have game directors. The hell does each job mean? What is a creative director? And what is a game director?
I'm sure we have like a job matrix at the office that lists. I couldn't tell you what.
The mess up thing is that that's what mine says, and I don't even have any clue. I know that I'm not very good at that. Yeah. Like, I'm way too much needing to be like boots on the ground.
Well, it's even more complicated because it's different from studio to studio.
Yeah.
It's even more different from industry to industry. But even if you go within the studio, the roles, especially when you get pretty high up, they kind of mold themselves to the different people. So, you know, I became a creative director after Amy Hennig, and we worked pretty differently. So what creative director meant for us became very different in some ways. And so generally, a game director is someone that's more concerned about the moment-to-moment gameplay. And a creative director, I'm kind of winging this, I'm probably going to get a lot of this wrong. At Naughty Dog, they're more concerned with story and tone and music. But it is very fuzzy. And it's by design that way, because I think sometimes when roles are too delineated, people aren't talking to each other. So you have to create some overlap, so there's some creative tension between ideas and even who has final say, so people can work it out.
Because there's never any tension with the entire team.
No, it's smooth sailing from inception to completion.
Super easy. Yeah,
So that's it at Naughty Dog-ish?
Yeah. Like creative director, you're sort of working with other people who, and this is just my take on it, so it's probably wrong. I'm not saying this is how it is, but like it is that sense of like the game director's like sort of doing it, right? They're making it, and the creative director is sort of helping.
Just taking all the credit.
Taking all the credit. Yeah. Doing all the interviews. I think that's really what it is. That's fantastic. But so it's like the coaching sort of aspect of it. I know that like my vision of what the creative director is, which is why I continue to question whether I'm not any good at it or not, is I would not want somebody while I'm trying to figure something out telling me, like questioning every decision, right? Telling me, no, do it like this, do it like that. And so I was like, I don't want to be that person, but I don't know if I'm so standoffish to say, like, I trust what they're doing. So if somebody is directing something and I would not do it that way, which is 99.99999% of the time, because everybody's different. Everybody has a different perspective, a different vision, a different life experience that takes them to that specific point in which they're making individual decisions as well as like what the vision of their game is. And I would do it completely differently, but in no way does it mean that what they're doing is wrong. It means that I would have just gone in a different direction, and being able to stop myself and say like, all right, I can speak up and say like, look, I sense dragons ahead. Be aware of that, but go for it if you feel that, right? Like I was really the control freak earlier on and realized like that's just not helping anybody, because I wouldn't want that, right? When I directed the first God of War game, God of War 2, back in the 1800s, Javi was like kind of chill about it as well. Like he did not get in there, except when he told me everything you're doing is terrible. Then it was like, okay, you're meddling right now. Can you just leave me alone? But like he gave me the space to kind of fuck up and fail and make some bad decisions until all the decisions were completely made. And he was playing a very near final version of the game going, do you really need this section of the game at all? Yeah, it's like 3 hours long. That's really good. Like, what do you mean I don't need it? And I realized like, I don't want that. Like, I don't want to be that person who's basically saying like, everything you're doing is wrong. It's more like figuring out how to help them have the confidence in what they're doing, because that's what I would want. Like as the director, knowing that you're kind of like out there on a ledge and arrows and slings are firing at you and it's just the constant war, what you want is that sort of calm voice that's saying, you're screwed. But that's saying like, look, it's not where I would have gone, but I can see you see this picture. I can see you see this, right? I had conversations with Eric where it was like, man, he made several decisions that I just would have gone in a different direction. But when I step away from him, I'm like, oh, I totally see that. Like I put the piece together where he got there and I'm like, oh, that made me feel like I got a little bit smarter, but also then made me go like, am I really even doing a job if he's kind of doing all of it? But I guess that's to me, the creative director then is just kind of like, you're empowering, you're helping them be their best self. And I hate it. I want to be the person that's doing it, right? Like I feel like obsessed that my control.
I'm sure you could demote yourself right now.
What's that?
You could demote yourself right now and be doing it.
Right. That's what I'm going to do.
Because I don't think you really want that. I think you like being the creative director.
I don't know.
I mean, I get that because there's times when I miss it. I miss being a programmer when you had a task and you knew when you were done. It was very clear, is the function working? Then I'm done. I can move on. Like going back to your question.
Animating.
When it's a creative endeavor, you don't ever fully know. And it's like, I think it's good. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, there's no like feeling.
Yeah.
And
then when you have so many of those, that's when the stress starts piling on, because I'm now like, there's like a million things that I think are good, I think are close to being done, but I never really know.
Yeah. God, that's the uncertainty, that we live in a state of almost complete uncertainty.
But I think that's also what makes it exciting. That's what makes it worth doing. If you could guarantee success, everybody would do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's exciting. All right, I'll keep the job. All right, I'm going to read my question now. How do you and your teams, I know this one, approach character development over multiple games? I'm glad you're going to have to answer that. Being able to show growth while maintaining what makes them compelling.
That's a very easy question for me to answer, because
Way to brag.
I never think about multiple games, because I'm like, the game in front of us is so all-consuming. And again, because you don't, I think it's like you're jinxing yourself if you're starting to think about the sequel when you're working on the first game. So, when I was making Last of Us 2, yeah, sure, every once in a while an idea crops in your head of like where it might go if we get the chance to do another one. But I just approach it as like, what if I never get to do another one?
Like, I'm gonna get fired after this.
Yeah, that was a real feeling. I want this to be able to stand on its own. And every project I've directed, I've approached that way. I guess it's a little different now with the TV show, because now we're saying, okay, this story takes multiple seasons. But except for that, everything like I've done, I was like, it has to all be in here. I'm not saving some idea for the future. If there's a cool idea, I'm doing my best to get it into here.
But are you building something?
Because
are you laying a seed?
Potentially, but I think that for me, I just find that happens organically. I'm not planning like a 3-game arc, but I can go in hindsight and look, okay, what have we done? What are things that are unresolved? Where else could these characters go? And if I feel like the answer is they can't go anywhere, then we just kill them off. But I'm half joking, but it's like we just find the next game. When we made Uncharted 1, we had no idea we would do the train sequence in Uncharted 2 or where Nathan Drake would be and all these. Like, we figured out when we made Uncharted 2. And eventually, same was with Uncharted 3, same was with Uncharted 4. But we looked back and say, how do we not repeat ourselves? Where else could this character go? What else could get him back into the adventure? And we have to come up with a new answer. And if we don't have a new answer, then we should ask ourselves, is this the right character? Is this the right game for us to work on? Or is it time to move on to something new?
That's a very healthy way to do it.
Why don't you tell me your 15-game plan?
I feel like maybe in the beginning I tried to start out that way, but now, not now, I mean very quickly, and then still now, I have a way too much of the Charlie Day crazy conspiracy board of trying to connect and plan all of these pieces, because I really love when the stars align to realize, like, you put something like 10 years ago in something that's going to come to fruition, that you're going to see this sort of journey for not only a character or for this moment, that it's just like, oh God, that's so magical. But it is absolutely, unequivocally the most unhealthy thing ever, because it is insanely stressful to try to fold and connect each of these pieces. Because games take like 5 years, there's hundreds of people involved, and then a whole new group of people often are moved in on the next project. That's a bunch of different opinions and perspectives and likes and dislikes that are going to kind of negatively impact you setting something up that early. And they're going to be like, let's talk about this, because that was kind of dumb. I don't know if I want to do that.
I guess I also find that when we work on the game, it changes so much in the course of production. What we thought we were making in the beginning is often quite different from where we've ended up.
Yeah.
So if at the very beginning we're planning sequels and transmedia things and all this stuff, they're like, and those things where you have some commitment to them, now you're gonna it's gonna feel more restrictive to organically go where the project wants to take you, because we planned this thing, we can't make this change right here.
Yeah.
And I want that flexibility while we're working on it.
Yeah, it never negatively impacts, like, oh, the story you're telling, the sort of like contained nature of the individual experience is still there, but the desire to seed these things, and it probably is just to try to feel smart and be like, look, man, I totally thought of this early on, and that's awesome. But there is a part of me that just appreciates.
I think for me that requires a level of confidence I just don't have, which is like, this is going to be so successful. I know where this is going next. I'm like, I just want to focus on the next 5 days in front of me, let alone 10 years down the line.
Yeah, it's weird, because I definitely feel like I'm getting fired after every game, so it's not a confidence thing. It's a weird obsession of like, I wanna try to put all these pieces in. But it is definitely not like the smartest thing, because again, it takes so long. Things change, people's sort of opinions and takes change on it, and we can't even agree on core issues sometimes that we ship a game. And I'm like, I thought we all agreed that this was what it was. Oh no, none of us agreed with that. That's not the headcanon that anybody else carries. And I'm like, oh man, why am I seeding all these other things? It's unhealthy, man. I'm gonna.
Before I have a question. Actually, I'm looking at the time. We have around 5 minutes. So, you've done now several games that have been extremely successful. You're about to endeavor on this TV show, based on stuff that you've written. You've had some history in movies and stuff. When is it enough? We're here right now, and we have our friend Ted Price retiring.
Ted.
When is this compulsion enough? When have you proven yourself enough? Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Wow.
Is it ever enough?
No. I mean, the short answer, no, it's never enough, and it is the voice in your head driving you more and more and more and more. The guy who played Reacher, Adam Richman, is that his name? In the TV show. He did this podcast interview that I saw that he was talking about, and he's like, one of these sort of awakening moments that he had. You struggle and you struggle and you work and you work and it feels thankless and you're not being heard, or the thing you're doing doesn't resonate with a large group of people, and then you reach that point where this mountain you've been looking at, you've been dreaming about, you've been aspiring to, finally you reach the summit of this mountain, and it's like the most amazing and horrible thing all at the exact same time, because when you get to the top of it, this demon of obsession inside of your head doesn't shut up and let you appreciate the moment, the smell of the air, the sound of this sort of like successful silence that you persevered, you struggled, you worked so hard to get all this, and so many people came together and used this sort of collective creative brain space to give birth to something that was only an idea or a concept, and just enjoy and revel and see that you accomplished this thing and you are at the top of the mountain. No, the demon just looks and goes, there's another mountain over there that's a lot taller. And okay, well, what next? Like, you don't even often take that time. And I don't want to believe that it is intentional. It is this weird, I think, silent, not so silent part of your individual makeup, that the reason you're in this is because you can't stop, right? You're driving yourself forward, and to your detriment, to everyone else giving you the advice to stop and pace, and you don't. And
because you find it somewhat self-destructive.
It's totally self-destructive. It's 100% purely 100% stupid, and you rationalize it to yourself over and over and over again, and you think when you get there, it'll be great, and it'll finally quiet the voice to say that, okay, it's good. And it's not achievement, right? It's not anything as much as that. It's as if there is this like thing, burr stuck in your brain.
It's a compulsion.
Yeah, and you have to get it out. And you think, like, when I get it out, I'm just going to be able to relax. It's so good, but you can't relax because, oh man, look at that thing over there, this next thing, or just the experience around it doesn't feel like you imagine. It never, ever feels like you imagine. Not in one way does it ever feel like you imagine, because you're constantly just negatively self-evaluating, right? And saying like, yeah, you remember that. It's that you wake up at 3 a.m. and you remember that stupid thing you said in a meeting 15 years ago and how embarrassing it was that you said that. And you're like, well, this is a good time to think about that. Well, let's go through the game tape and let's go through all these things, and now magnify that to, I worked really hard on this project, and now I feel like a lot of the stuff I did negatively impacted for other people, right? Like, I had this idea and it was kind of dumb, and man, they did this other thing and it was really cool, and I kind of let them down on that. That's a long answer to say it's never enough, and it needs to be. It has to be, so that the next step that you take out of passion, right, and love, like, not compulsion. I mean, I hope everybody else does that, because I'm not going to do it. And then that's, growth. Trust the process. I'm going to keep saying that to myself. Maybe it's going to be true one day. When is it ever enough for you? You're asking for a friend. I'm not going to read this question. I want to know about that. You're asking for a friend. Is it ever enough for you? You've done it. You directed multiple episodes, which I don't understand in any way how you have the time to do that, sir.
I don't, and again, there's a self-destructive part of it, that it's like you're sometimes, yeah, you end up in this just mentally exhausted and often even physically exhausted.
Yeah.
But it's like you feel like, again, it goes back to like, it's why I wake up in the morning. It's like, I mean, these days, I think what helps me get more perspective are my kids. which is like, we were talking about it the other day. I'm sitting there with my son watching Stranger Things, and he leans into me, and it's like, this is all I need. I don't need much more than this. But then that compulsion kicks in. So for me, it's like, I definitely think more about the end. Because eventually you just
Okay, how morbid are we
eventually you
getting?
cannot do it.
The end retirement, or are you getting dark here?
No, well, it's all dark.
Right, okay, retire. We're talking about retirement, it's all cool.
I guess just maybe to wrap it up, I was just thinking about it because we're in this space. I was reminded that I was a volunteer here at DICE. I was talking to Jason Rubin, who got me my first job at Naughty Dog. And he said to me, I'm leaving Naughty Dog. And that will create a space for everybody to kind of rise up and do, like Evan Wells is going to replace me, do what I've done. Someone will replace Evan Wells. So I think about those opportunities, eventually when I am done doing this, it will create a bunch of opportunities for people. So for me, it's like, I'm slowly like kind of just rising up. I'm getting less involved on the day-to-day stuff, like on this project that I'm on, just on this very high level. And eventually I think I'll just be able to completely remove myself. I don't know how long that will take, but I think about it, and I think about the opportunities that will create for next people to take on the stress and take on their ideas and be vulnerable and do all those things that I find that we were very lucky and that we got to do.
You convinced me. I'm going to retire. Good.
All right.
Don't say that. All right. I think that we were at 0 for a little bit. So
I hope our rambling was good for you all.
Yeah, I hope it was good. And this is something that I know that all of you know because we all make video games. So video games and all forms of media and entertainment are these things, and I don't mean this in a negative way, and it's often been put in a negative way, an escape, a way for us to find and embrace and comfort a part of ourselves, to lose ourselves into something amazing. And we have been part of this industry that was born of telling these great stories, giving these great experiences, challenging the players, but also, elevating not only the art, but the players themselves. And I know somewhere along the way that we've lost a little bit of that. We've focused on some of the wrong things, but I know that there are people in this industry that are focused and have within them the desire to bring back this concept of giving to players these experiences that holistically, wholeheartedly in the damn box are gonna carry you off to some place that makes your day just a tiny bit fucking better, your life just a tiny bit better. And you can't ask for anything more than that. And I am so just in awe of being part of an industry where people are able to create these experiences. So thank you to everybody who creates.
100%.
You make this worth it.